So greetings of the day. We will start today the very interesting chapter which is called respiration. So respiration is one of my favorite, and I hope you will be also at the end of the lecture able to grasp the concept and solve all the questions related to it. So if I'm talking about respiration, it is one of the most basic features of life. Why it is one of the most basic features of life? Because without this, it provides energy for life processes. Whatever physiological processes that occur in our body, it is always providing energy for that. Now, it is many a time observed that students are having confusion regarding breathing and cellular respiration. So let us at the very beginning clear up the difference between breathing and cellular respiration. In human physiology chapter, the system is told as respiratory system. तो क्या ब्रीदिंग में रेस्पिरेशन होता है या रेस्पिरेशन में ब्रीदिंग होती है? Breathing is a physical process which help in respiration. So we should, all of us should know the difference very clearly. That's why I am teaching you. First point, we need to define breathing. It is just nothing but intake of O2 and release of CO2. Okay. So in one word, I can call it as gaseous exchange, isn't it? So gaseous exchange with the atmosphere between the cells, and this gaseous exchange is required. In cellular respiration, it's not intake or release. It is about oxidation of organic substance to produce energy. So how they are related we will see. What is the second difference? If I talk, it occur in respiratory system. It is occurring in respiratory system. And in this case, particular case, the cellular respiration occur in cell. Each and every cell is the site of respiration. Okay, and this is a physical process. So physical process means no chemical change is there, and this physical process where movement of gases will take place. As per partial pressure or we can say partial pressure gradient by diffusion. So simple diffusion method is taking place over here. Whereas when I'm talking about respiration, it's not a physical process. It's a chemical process. It's a chemical process where breaking of carbon-carbon bonds So what carbon-carbon bond? Respiration means extracting energy from any kind of organic substance. So if I am using organic substance, there will be carbon-carbon bond, and those bonds will be the source of energy. So it is done under supervision of who is supervising? Do you think the reaction? Class? Supervision of enzymes to produce. You can take screenshot and you can use it as a notes. Okay, so I'll just move ahead. So in respiration, the substance that is used as a source of energy are known as respiratory substrate. Okay, so what are the source of respiratory substrate in our body? What do you think can be the respiratory substrate?
Glucose.
Let me tell you, respiratory substrate can be anything. It can be a carbohydrate, any kind of carbohydrate. It can be protein. It can be lipid. It can be any other organic acid also. And the source of all these are food. So, but then you will have one question that if any kind of food material can be used as a respiratory substrate, then why when we talk about respiration, we always start the cycle or the equation by the help of C6H12O6, that is glucose, because it is the most easily usable respiratory substrate. That's why if a person is not well, the person doesn't have energy to obtain, and like person doesn't have energy to obtain further energy from food, directly glucose usko चढ़ाया जाता है so that it can utilize glucose directly. Okay, so now based on food production, plants can be divided into autotrophs and heterotrophs. So the respiratory substrates of autotrophs, chemoautotrophs are obtained by themselves only, but heterotrophs will be dependent on autotrophs for their food. Okay, so we already talked about autotrophs, chemoautotrophs, different types of heterotrophs in nutrition chapter. So I am not discussing it over here. In plants, the food is produced in green parts. What about the non-green parts? For example, root is not the site for production of food. So in chapter number 11, we discussed that the organic food is translocated to those positions. Okay. And after translocation, the non-green part of the plants can also use them. So do you think this oxidation process is a easy one?
No, ma'am.
No. Generally, students, when we start studying respiration chapter, get very annoyed with the concept कि यार life process में 10th में पढ़ा था, अच्छा खासा एक single reaction था, बीच में इतने सारे चीजें डाल दी हैं, and the reaction we are habituated is C6H12O6 plus O2 gives rise to CO2, then there will be energy and H2. So we wonder, actually it's not at all easy. It's a very slow and step by step process. The whole respiration process minimum have 2 to 3 big cycles or steps or pathways, which is leading to the formation of energy currency of the cell. So what is the energy currency? Who is energy currency of the cell?
ATP. ATP.
Why ATP? क्या खास बात है उसको करेंसी क्यों बोलते हैं?
मैम क्योंकि कहीं पर भी एनर्जी चाहिए होती तो उसका ब्रेक डाउन करके हम एनर्जी उसमें से जो एनर्जी रिलीज होती है वो यूटिलाइज कर सकते हैं.
Very good. So if respiration is important, do you think breathing is also important? मतलब कौन सा ज्यादा जरूरी है, breathing या respiration?
मैम दोनों पैरेलली चलेंगे तभी अच्छा होगा ना.
क्यों?
मैम क्योंकि अगर ब्रीदिंग के थ्रू अगर हम इनहेल नहीं करेंगे तो फिर वो ऑक्सीडेशन किसका होगा?
वेरी गुड. ऑक्सीडेशन किसका नहीं होगा, ऑक्सीडेशन कैसे होगा? हाउ ऑक्सीडेशन विल टेक प्लेस? हाउ? बिकॉज when if we are not intaking oxygen and if we are not releasing CO2, which is quite harmful for us from our body, obviously organism cannot go for oxidation. At some extent require oxygen, so that supply of oxygen is maintained by the respiratory system of our body, which does breathing. So now I have a very vital question, that plants do not have respiratory system, isn't it? So do you
Yes,
think
ma'am.
plants need? If they, how they?
Ma'am, they breathe via 3 types of pores.
3 types of pores. What are the 3 types? Third type?
Ma'am, stomatal, lenticell, and one more type.
Generally by 2 types only I know, that is stomata and lenticell. Okay, so yes, they like breathe via stomata and lenticell. So every organism, dependent on their size of body and complexity of body, they have their respiratory organs. For example, in case of Tinea solium, they don't require respiratory system, but earthworm requires. So more the number of cells, it is difficult to for oxygen to reach everywhere, the carbon dioxide to collect it everywhere. In case of earthworm, which is an annelid, proper respiratory system is like absent. But in human, it is very much required, because every cell of our body, or rather to say every living cell of our body, is respiring. So oxygen need to reach to every point of our body. Okay, so it is very much important that the oxygen and CO2 circulation should be there properly. So plants are very big, no? Isn't it? Yes or no? And they are complex
ma'am.
also, but then also they manage without this respiratory system. How do you think they manage? So
Ma'am, because they do not move.
what is correct?
मैम by simple diffusion.
Actually, in case of plants, each part have its own gaseous exchange. Okay, so why this is? Because there is very less scope for gases to get transported via plant. They have thick cell wall, no? And many a time these cell walls are very thick and dignified. So We cannot expect the gas to travel from one place to other via diffusion. Although they have a circulatory system, तब भी वो इतना आसानी से possible नहीं था. That's why it is very much required for plants to have their own gaseous exchange done by them. Next is, if I'm talking about plant parts, okay, the overall rate of respiration is very low. So overall rate of respiration and it can be what I can say, it can be managed because they do not have such vigorous lifestyle like animals. Okay, so leaves are the site where maximum gaseous exchange takes place. And as you know, in case of chapter 6, we studied about the anatomy of leaf. There you observed that spongy parenchyma tissue is there, which is having that sponginess, that is gaps, which is ensuring that gas can have paths to move. Apart from that, the flat surface of leaf is talking about the increase in surface area, so that gaseous exchange can be very easily done in case of plants. Is this part clear to everyone?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, so the thing is that with this it is clear that plants also
Ma'am,
have respiration, but they don't have respiratory system. Yes, beta.
मैम आप फर्स्ट रीजन वापस से बताओ.
Each part will have their own gaseous exchange. Root itself is getting gaseous exchange by its own. You don't have to have nose or nostril, and you don't have to send gas everywhere. Diffusion is, every part is doing its gaseous exchange. They are self-sufficient. And plant have most of the part dead also, no? तो हम प्लांट्स को जितना बड़ा देखते हैं उसमें से लिविंग सेल्स का परसेंटेज इज क्वाइट लो एज कंपेयर्ड विद एनिमल. So obviously the oxygen requirement and CO2 removal requirement will be comparatively less. Understood?
Yes.
So from this discussion, it is very clear that plants also respire, and plants actually very much use the respiratory substrate. But as far as oxygen transport circulation, CO2 transport circulation is required, the concept is a bit different than the plants. Apart from that, plants, when they catabolize the glucose, I hope all of you know what is anabolism and catabolism. Can anyone tell me what do we mean by anabolism and catabolism?
Ma'am, catabolism is the breakdown of complex molecule to simpler one, and anabolism is from simple one to complex.
Very good. So, in this catabolic process, plants use energy wisely. Now, the thing is that I told you that respiration is, although we write it the equation as C6H12O6, plus O2, or to be more precise, 6O2 gives rise to 6CO2 plus 6H2O plus NH. So although the equation is like this, it's not a one-step process, it is a multi-step process. Why we require such multi-step process? Why this can be subdivided into A to B, B to C, C to D, up to infinity steps we have. Why? Because this slow release, slow and step by step release of energy and its conversion to ATP, okay, stops heat loss. पता है आपको अगर पापड़ सेकने के लिए बोल दिया जाए गैस में, गैस को बहुत जोर से बढ़ा के अगर आप सेको तो क्या होगा? पापड़ जल्दी सीख जाएगा? व्हाट डू यू थिंक क्लास? तो यू आर करेक्ट कि जितना जल्दी सीखेगा उतना जल्दी जल जाएगा. मतलब the energy you are giving, you are not getting the result as per that. So if respiration would have been a single step process, then too much energy will be produced at a time which cannot be 100% converted into ATP. Obviously 100% conversion is not possible in case of multi-step process also, but to certain extent the heat loss can be prevented by this. Understood? So that is why it is a very slow and stepwise process. Now we while we define the definition of respiration, we use the word oxidation, and as grade 11 12 students you know that so when I use the word oxidation, that doesn't mean always oxygen should be involved. You know that oxidation can be termed as losing of electron, and reduction can be termed as gaining of electron. So we will talk about the types of respiration. So when I'm talking about types of respiration, various bases of classification of respiration is there. Based on respiratory substrate, that is what is used in respiration, based on respiratory substrate as per the classification provided by Blackman. Okay, so it can be known as floating respiration, or it can be known as protoplasmic respiration. Have you ever heard about these words? So if the respiratory substrate is fat or carbohydrate, we call it as a floating respiration, and if it is a protein, we call this as protoplasmic respiration. Why we give such kind of names? Any idea from the names? Anyone? One moment. So floating respiration and protoplasmic respiration is called because carbohydrate can be used as a respiratory substrate and fat can be used as a storage respiratory substrate without causing much damage to the basic structure of body, because fat and carbohydrate can be stored in our body. So whenever I am using them as a respiratory substrate, they are first extracted from the storage, and then they can be going to the taken from the constructional part of the body. Whereas in case of protein cannot be stored in our body. So if I am taking protein as a respiratory substrate, that means I am actually breaking some part of protein which is there, which is having a function, which is constituting some part responsible to create part of body, and I am utilizing it. That's why it is known as floating respiration and protoplasmic respiration. In case of second basis is presence and absence of oxygen. All of you must have studied about them. If oxygen is absent, we call it anaerobic respiration. Okay. In case of anaerobic respiration is incomplete oxidation, respiratory substrate takes place. So as the oxidation is incomplete, so as there is absence of oxygen, so energy produced by anaerobic respiration is obviously less. Okay, understood? So if there is complete oxidation, the amount of energy released, that is 38 ATP. In anaerobic respiration, the ATP produced are definitely less than that. Now, anaerobic organisms can be further subdivided into facultative and obligate. So what do we mean by facultative and obligate? Can anyone enlighten? I think we discussed about this facultative and obligate. Class? Anyone? What do we mean by facultative anaerobes and obligate anaerobes? So facultative anaerobic organism can
Switch to the fermented form in absence of oxygen.
live in presence of O2. They can switch, as your friend said, she was correct. Depending on situation, they switch from aerobic to anaerobic. Whereas in case of obligate, they lack enzymes from aerobic respiration. So for them, the only means of respiration is anaerobic one. So in case of aerobic respiration, if I'm talking about aerobic respiration, that means what? It is the complete oxidation of respiratory substance in presence of oxygen. That's why we call it aerobic respiration. Okay. So from this it is clear that all organisms, maybe it is a simple unicellular organism, maybe it is prokaryotic, maybe it is eukaryotic, maybe it is staying in extreme environment like thermoacidophilus, methanogens, maybe a big tree, maybe human being, everyone is requiring respiration. So the question is, what we do with the energy obtained by respiration? What we do? What is the fate of energy obtained by respiration? Anyone? ऐसे ही करते हैं, मजा आता है. Class, what is the purpose of producing energy via respiration?
Ma'am, first of all, it will help in daily activities of our body and also helpful for generating more energy.
Like I will
Ma'am, plant
the physiological processes like digestion, working of functionality of respiratory system, circulatory system, nervous system, endocrine system, everywhere we require. In case of plants also, energy is required for everything, including photosynthesis also we observe. Okay, so it is required for physiological activities. Second thing is used to produce more energy, and last I wish to mention, higher organism use it for homeostasis. What do we mean by homeostasis? Anyone? Class? Anyone knows what is homeostasis?
Ma'am, a process to stop bleeding.
That is called blood clotting, beta. So the body temperature maintenance is a very taxing thing in human being, and it's not an easy thing, and it is done with lots of effort. So you need to understand that for that we require very important the use of energy. In fact, the energy we obtain by respiration, 70 to 80% of it is used to maintain the internal condition of our body. That's why grade 12 students know that many organisms do not regulate, they just conform because they cannot afford the regulation of internal condition. So if you have any doubt, feel free to ask me the questions, because after this I am going to start the process of respiration, and we will start with glycolysis. So now we will enter into the process of respiration. So for any kind of respiration process, if I am talking about respiration in the cellular level, we know that in case of plants, they have carbohydrate mainly as a respiratory substrate. They produce glucose by photosynthesis method, and this glucose, while transport, is converted into sucrose, and while storage it is converted into starch. So anytime they want to utilize their respiratory substrate, it needs to be converted into glucose, and then from the point of glucose it can be used. So there are enzymes present in plants, there are enzymes present in our case. For example, if I am eating a morsel of rice, that rice will go in my mouth, then in stomach rice doesn't get digested, in small intestine it will be digested, and finally I will have glucose, with which I can start as a respiratory substrate. But what about fat and protein? Do we need to produce glucose from them and then go for production of respiratory substrate? Temporarily, I am not talking about that. I am just keeping a silence because suspense is required, and at the end of the chapter, we will study about amphibolic pathway, where you will know that how protein and lipid can be converted into a substance which is midway of respiratory pathway, and directly it can then enter into the respiratory pathway somewhere from in between. Okay, so respiration process, be it anaerobic or aerobic, is starting with a process called glycolysis. Intentionally, I am writing it like this. Actually, if I need to write it, there should not be any gap. But to make you understand, the meaning of glycolysis is glyco means carbohydrate and lysis means breakdown. Alternatively, it is known as EMP pathway. Why we call it EMP pathway? On the basis of name of three scientists who discovered it by using radioactive technique. Name of these scientists were Emden, Meyerhoff, and Baroness. So in glycolysis, basically what happens is glucose is converted into pyruvic acid. So glucose is a 6-carbon compound and pyruvic acid is a 3-carbon compound. So obviously, by breaking down of one molecule of glucose, 2 molecules of pyruvic acids are produced. Now, from this point, it is ready to go to different types of pathways. It can go for aerobic, respiration, or it can go for anaerobic respiration. Okay, that is why the location of glycolysis is cytoplasm, because in case of lower organisms, many of them do not have mitochondria. तो याद रखो respiration का जो first step है, which is common between aerobic, anaerobic, fermentation everywhere, all of them are having a common start point, that is called glycolysis. After this, in case of aerobic respiration, it is occurring in mitochondria. In anaerobic respiration, it may occur in mesosome or it may occur in cytoplasm further. Okay. So that's why glycolysis is really very important pathway from the point of view of respiration. Now I will draw the glycolytic pathway, and I will share the screen instead of drawing, because it will take much time to draw. So give me a moment till I share this. So I decided to write, because all of you will write with myself, and this is the way where nicely we can revise. So it is starting with glucose. First, I will write down the steps. So from glucose, there will be production of glucose 6-phosphate. Then from glucose 6-phosphate, there will be production of fructose 6-phosphate. From fructose 6-phosphate, there will be production of fructose 1,6 bisphosphate. After fructose 1,6 bisphosphate, this fructose 1,6 bisphosphate will be divided into two compounds, because there will be a cleavage reaction which will produce glyceraldehyde 3-phosphate and dihydroxy acetone phosphate. Okay, these two phosphates are called triose phosphate. I'll tell you why, and they can get converted amongst each other. So from glyceraldehyde 3-phosphate, there will be production of 1,3 bisphosphoglyceric acid. Okay. After that, there will be production of 3-phosphoglyceric acid. From 3-phosphoglyceric acid, there will be production of 2-phosphoglyceric acid. From 2-phosphoglyceric acid, there will be formation of 2-phosphoglycerate. Wait for a moment. Then from there will be formation of phosphoenol pyruvate. and then there will be formation of pyruvic acid. So I hope everyone is shocked with the pathway. और आप सोच रहे होंगे कि मैम ये हम कैसे याद रखेंगे, कितना अजीब है, कितना भयानक है, क्या करेंगे क्या नहीं करेंगे. Don't worry, by the end of this class it will be remembered by you. There is nothing to worry about it. But let me finish a few things and then we will start discussion. First of all, let me write down the carbon number of each and every molecule. So up to this, the compounds are having carbon numbers 6 and 6. This glyceraldehyde 3-phosphate, as I mentioned, they are called triose phosphate. So their carbon number is 3 and 3. Understood? And henceforth, all are having carbon number 3. Now, we will write down the steps which are occurring in between. So obviously, if first step I am talking about, in this first step, glucose is converted into glucose 6-phosphate. So what do you think is the type of reaction that takes place? The reaction is known as phosphorylation. What do we mean by phosphorylation? Phosphorylation means phosphate ka add hona.
Addition.
So it is known as addition of phosphate. Okay. So in phosphorylation reaction, obviously if you are adding phosphate, that means you need to have phosphate, then only you can add, isn't it? So if you want to add phosphate, what can be the source of phosphate for to be added? कौन phosphate देगा इसको? It will be given by ATP. So in this reaction, ATP will be broken down into ADP plus PI, and this inorganic phosphate or PI will be added here in glucose 6-phosphate. So first step is done in this way, and obviously whenever ATP and ADP conversion is there, when I taught you about the mineral nutrient requirement in grade 11 chapter 12, I told you magnesium ion is used as a cofactor for all ATP related enzymes. So ATP to ADP formation is done. Now I just wish to tell you that the enzyme which is responsible for this reaction is known as hexokinase. Very easy to remember this the enzyme. Why? You know that glucose and glucose 6-phosphate both are hexose, isn't it? Because they have 6 carbon. And kinase word is coming from the energy. So that's why enzyme which is catalyzing this reaction is known as hexokinase. Next is glucose 6-phosphate to fructose 6-phosphate. So if I am talking about this reaction is known as isomerization. So you know that glucose and fructose both have same chemical formula, that is 6C6H6O12. C6H12O6, sorry. So what is the difference between glucose and fructose? Anyone?
Functional group.
So in glucose it is
Ketone.
aldehyde. In fructose it is
Ketone.
So obviously only the change in functional group will take place. That's why this reaction is known as isomerization reaction, and the enzyme which is catalyzing this is known as phosphohexose isomerase. Okay. Why phosphohexose? Because पहले ये सिर्फ hexose था, glucose was only hexose. Now phosphate group is added, so it is called phosphohexose, and it is converting one phosphohexose, that is glucose 6 phosphate, to fructose 6 phosphate. What do we mean by 6 phosphate? 6 phosphate होंगे क्या उसमें?
No, ma'am.
So then what this 6 number signifies?
It will attach on the carbon number 6.
Very good. So that is something nice you people know. So now in the next step, can you predict what type of reaction it will be? I'll write enzyme first. The name of enzyme is phosphofructokinase. Again kinase. So can you predict the rest? What type of reaction is this? Is it isomerization? Fructose 6 phosphate to fructose 1,6 bisphosphate. Anyone want to try? What type of reaction is this? Again phosphorylation. Obviously addition of phosphate group takes place. एक phosphate group था पहले,
यूज होगा.
हाँ दूसरा आ गया, so it will be a phosphorylation reaction. That means here also there will be conversion of ATP, which is having magnesium as a cofactor to form ADP, and the inorganic phosphate is added here. So now fructose was having one phosphate group attached to the 6th carbon. Now it is having two phosphate groups, one attached to the 6th carbon and other one is attached to the 1st carbon. Okay. So after this there will be once again a reaction. Definitely this reaction is known as cleavage reaction. Why? Fructose, which is a 6 carbon molecule, if I draw it like this, is broken down if in between to give through 2-3 carbon molecules. Okay, so this is a very significant step. You have to understand why we call it cleavage. The enzyme which is catalyzing it is known as aldolase. Just a minute. Okay, so after this breaking down, we actually get 2-3 carbon compounds, and these 2-3 carbon compounds can go get converted from one to another, and this is getting converted to one to another via enzyme phosphotriose isomerase, or in other words it is also known as triose phosphate isomerase. And this reaction is again, what type of reaction is this? Bolo bacha.
Phosphorylation.
No, how?
Isomerization.
No, it is isomerization. Isomerase word is there, beta. Dihydroxyacetone phosphate and glyceraldehyde both have same chemical formula, only one is as ketone, another one is aldehyde. Understood? So the reaction taking place over here is known as dihydroxy, conversion of dihydroxyacetone phosphate to glyceraldehyde and glyceraldehyde to dihydroxyacetone phosphate. Both is known as isomerization reaction, and the reaction is catalyzed by enzyme phosphotriose. Understood everyone?
Yes, ma'am.
बट एक कहानी में ट्विस्ट है जो हमेशा ध्यान रखना. इफ एनी कैलकुलेशन पीपल आस्क यू रिगार्डिंग ग्लाइकोलिसिस, यू हैव टू अंडरस्टैंड कि यहां से लेके ग्लिसरल्डिहाइड तक सिंगल ग्लूकोज मॉलिक्यूल था. आफ्टर ग्लिसरल्डिहाइड देयर विल बी 2 molecules of glyceraldehyde produced, because dihydroxyacetone phosphate produced may be utilized somewhere else, but most of it is getting converted into glyceraldehyde. तो यहाँ तक स्टेप में जो भी चीजें आ रही है दे शुड बी वन इन नंबर. जैसे एक दो एटीपी यूज हुआ है, बट इसके बाद जो भी चीजें आएंगे दे शुड बी मल्टीप्लाइड बाय 2, क्योंकि दीज आर ओनली फॉर वन ग्लिसरल्डिहाइड मॉलिक्यूल. बट एक ग्लूकोज से कितने ग्लिसरल्डिहाइड मिलते हैं? 2. एक डायरेक्टली मिलते हैं, दूसरा डाइहाइड्रोक्सी एसीटोन फॉस्फेट से कन्वर्ट होके मिलता है. सो एवरीथिंग दैट विल बी यूज्ड और प्रोड्यूस्ड आफ्टर दिस स्टेप will be multiplied by 2. Is it clear to everyone?
Yes, ma'am.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. So here there will be some kind of new thing to be added, that is NAD. So 2 NAD will be used, and there will be formation of 2 NaH plus H. So what type of reaction do you think is this, class? Apart from that, there will be glyceraldehyde 3-phosphate, and this glyceraldehyde 3-phosphate, जिसमें single phosphate was there. Here 2 phosphate groups are there because it is getting converted into 1,3-bis-phosphoglyceric acid. So there will be addition of phosphate, but this time it is not done by ATP, because ATP cannot supply phosphate for such low reaction demand. You know that about gives free energy in case of thermodynamics. Here in this case also gives free energy will be there for each and every step. When you will study in higher grades, you will have a topic called bioenergetics. There you will know that why H3PO4, that is inorganic source of phosphate, is used here for donation of phosphate. So who is going to tell me what type of reaction is this? Is it
Phosphorylation.
so? One, it is phosphorylation. Very good. Other than that, two things are taking place na beta. One is here and other is here. NAD का भी तो कुछ हो रहा है. So what is that? Is called dehydrogenation. Or I can write here as reduction of NAD. Don't you think we can call it as
Yes,
a reduction of NAD? So remember, in this step, 2 reactions are taking place. Okay. So now glyceraldehyde was having aldehyde group. Second thing, aldehyde means what it is? It was having CHO. अब it is converted into 1,3-bis-phosphoglyceric acid. मतलब ये अब क्या बन गया है? ये ग्रुप में कन्वर्ट हो गया। इसके अलावा उसके पास फॉस्फेट भी ऐड हो गया है। ओके, सो आफ्टर दिस we need to definitely know the enzyme which is responsible for this reaction. It is very simple enzyme. It is known as diphospoglyceraldehyde. So diphospoglyceraldehyde dehydrogenase. मतलब आप यहाँ पे in this reaction you can write reduction of NAD or you can write dehydrogenation. Why? Because NAD is accepting hydrogen and glyceraldehyde is getting rid of hydrogen. Okay, so that is why the enzyme name is diphospoglyceraldehyde dehydrogenase. So let's see the enzyme that is very importantly used over here. So the next compound is 1,3-bisphosphoglyceric acid. So this is the step where 1,3-bisphosphoglyceric acid is finally forming 3-phosphoglyceric acid. So that means if I'm looking into this step, there will be opposite reaction where 2-ADP will be forming 2-ATP. ADP को phosphate कहाँ से मिल रहा है? यहाँ से मिल रहा है. Okay, and obviously the enzyme responsible for this is known as phosphoglycerase transphosphorylase. Okay, so obviously as energy is involved here also magnesium ions will be required, but it is not phosphorylation. Can you tell me what this reaction is called as? It is
Dephosphorylation.
very good. It is known as dephosphorylation. अभी इतना difficult नहीं लग रहा है ना pathway? तो शुरुआत में लिखा था जितना लगा था. If we understand, if you write it twice, जैसे bones के name हमें difficult पड़ते हैं, वैसे ये भी आदत पड़ जाता है. ठीक है? So here we will talk about the next reaction. So 3-phosphoglyceric acid will be converted into 2-phosphoglyceric acid. So here in this case, the enzyme which is useful here is known as phosphoglyceromutase. Mutation reaction कर रहा है वो. It is actually changing the pathway. So how it is changing the molecule? Because the phosphate group was present in 3rd carbon, now it will be present in 2nd carbon. So the type of reaction I can say as group transfer. This type of reaction is called group transfer. So next step is 2-phosphoglycerate will be glyceric acid will be forming phosphoglycerate. Phosphoglyceric acid में उसका formula ये होता है. And what is glycerate? Glycerates are ester. Isn't it? 8 means it is esters. So COOH के जगह पे something else will be added. So this 2-phosphoglyceric acid is forming 2-phosphoglycerate. What is the enzyme responsible for this? The enzyme responsible for this is known as enolase. Why? It is doing enol formation, and that's why it is known as enolase enzyme. So the reaction we can write as enolization reaction. Okay. After this, we have to understand that during this enolization reaction, one molecule of H2O is coming out. Okay. Then finally, the 2-phosphoglycerate is converted into phosphoenol. 2-phosphoglycerate will be, glyceric acid will be first converted into phosphoglycerate, and then one moment. So this phosphoglyceric acid converted into phosphoglycerate by glyceromutase, and then enolase will go for enolization reaction to form phosphoenol pyruvate, and final step where last molecule of ATP will be produced is, so here also ADP will be converted into ATP, and this is done with the help of enzyme which is known as pyruvate kinase.
मैम यहाँ पे भी 2 ATP जनरेट होंगे ना?
हाँ, so there will be definitely 2 ATP generate होगा. Single step में 1. Why I am writing 2 over in front of everything? Because I told you the reason. When fructose 1,6-phosphate splits, it is forming 2 molecules of glycerol. Yet we have to calculate accordingly. That's why I am writing 2. So don't एक confuse मत होना ये सोच के कि उसको फिर 2 से multiply करके 4 कर दो. You have to understand this is the final balance sheet with which you will calculate. Okay. So it's better to write. Let me do one thing. Let me write it down like this. Then also it will be easy for you to understand. So do not get confused. Okay. So last reaction obviously will be a reaction where dephosphorylation is taking place. So this will be the last reaction, dephosphorylation. Okay. Now in glycolysis, the reaction up to this, from this to this, this is known as activation phase or energy consuming phase. Why? Because in this stage you are not producing any ATP, you are actually utilizing ATP. So that's why we are calling it activation phase, or we can use it as energy consuming phase. And last, from here to the rest is known as payoff phase, or energy producing phase. Okay. Now, as I always plan to go for a poem for this, so I'm just talking about that poem. It's not a very witty one, They are never witty. They should be funny so that we can remember. It is called गांव से गांव फिरे और फिरे. ठीक है. This is stands for pagal. Why pagal? Because phosphoglyceraldehyde or glyceraldehyde 3-phosphate is also in short form written as PGALD. So that's why pagal, dhanpat, because dihydroxyacetone phosphate is written as DHAP. That's why it is dhanpat. So गांव से गांव फिरे और फिरे पागल धनपत. Okay. नाचे हंसे. So you know it is dancing, it is laughing. बोले पीजिए. पीजिए क्यों? क्योंकि फॉस्फोग्लिसरिक एसिड शॉर्ट फॉर्म इज PGA, फॉस्फोग्लिसरिक एसिड. बोले पीजिए. क्या क्या पीजिए? यहाँ पे एनर्जी ड्रिंक. क्यों एनर्जी ड्रिंक? बिकॉज ATP is getting produced. ओके. बोले पीजिए एनर्जी ड्रिंक. वापस से पीजिए. पागल है, एक बार बोलने से उसका मन नहीं भरता है. 2-phosphoglycerate is denoted by PG. so इसको हम बोलेंगे पाजी. पाजी इसीलिए क्योंकि पंजाबी लोग बोलते हैं पाजी क्या कर रहे हो, तो वैसे पाजी. ठीक है. अब इसमें बड़े मजेदार है. पीने से जाएगा प्यास. क्यों जाएगा प्यास? क्योंकि पानी निकल रहा है, इसीलिए जाएगा प्यास. ठीक है. और इसी वजह से वी आर सेइंग कि पीने से जाएगा प्यास. ठीक है. और आएगा एनर्जी. यहाँ पे हम बोलेंगे आएगा एनर्जी. ओके. सो पीजिए पाजी. पीने से इज दिस वन. पीने से इज दिस वन. जाएगा प्यास, आएगा एनर्जी, एंड फाइनली पाएंगे एक्यूरेसी. पायरुविक एसिड इज पाएंगे एक्यूरेसी. तो आई विल राइट द शॉर्ट फॉर्म जिससे आपको पता चल जाएगा. ग्लिसरल्डिहाइड इज this is also known as PGALD. This is known as dihydroxyacetone phosphate. This is known as PGA. So it is written as 3-PGA. It is written as 1,3-PGA. Sorry, it is written as 3-PGA. It is known as PG. It is known as PEP, and it is known as PA. ओके. तो एक बार मेरे साथ बोल सकते हो तो बोलो. गांव से गांव फिरे और फिरे पागल धनपत. नाचे हंसे बोले पीजिए एनर्जी ड्रिंक. पीजिए पाजी. पीने से जाएगा प्यास, आएगी एनर्जी, और पाएंगे एक्यूरेसी. Understand? So this will help you to remember the order of compounds and you will never forget. Wherever I mentioned about energy, there will be production of energy, and that's all about it. When a person is roaming from village to village, गांव से गांव जब वो घूम रहा है और फिरे, at that time energy will be consumed, which is indicating over here. So how was the poem? Very bad, very good, average, rating, please.
Ma'am, perfect to remember.
Great. So you remember this. Last thing I just wish to say, I'll take 2 more minutes. You need to prepare a balance sheet. Okay. Balance sheet means what are the things that is used and not used. Mainly we will take care of ATP. So ATP consumed and produced and NADH plus H plus consumed and produced. But I recommend for your reference, you can mention here about the step, okay, and number. You can mention here about the step and number. How to do that? If I prepare the balance sheet, first thing I can do is I can definitely write down the number of steps. So this is my first, second, third, fourth, fifth, sixth, seventh, eighth, ninth, and 10th. So it is a 10-step process. So ATP used is in first to second and then third to fourth, isn't it? So it will be used in first to second में एक use हो रहा है, number is 1, and then third to fourth में एक use हो रहा है, ठीक है? Where ATP is produced, so I want you people to do it by yourself. I showed you one thing by doing. You do it by yourself and let me know. In our next lecture, we will discuss about the balance sheet. Okay. So that's all from my side today. I hope you enjoyed this lecture. Next day, we will talk about the connecting pathways of glycolysis. And then we will talk a bit about anaerobic respiration, fermentation, and PCA cycle, which is the next step of glycolysis. Okay. So any doubts, anyone? If not, can we conclude today?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, then bye to all of you. Bye, beta.